Did you know that the first ever Thanksgiving meal didn't actually include turkey, cranberries, or pumpkin pie? Shocking, isn't it? That's right, folks. Our beloved Thanksgiving staples were nowhere to be found at that inaugural feast. Instead, the menu was likely brimming with venison, seafood, and an array of local vegetables. Quite the culinary curveball from the traditional spread we know and love today. So if you're feeling guilty about that extra piece of pie, remember, you're just making up for the first settlers. So, if turkeys could breathe a sigh of relief during the first Thanksgiving, what were they actually eating? Well, let's take a step back in time, all the way to the year 1621. Picture this, a 3-day feast, a celebration of a successful harvest shared between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag tribe. A feast that was not just a simple meal, but a grand event that brought together two different worlds. Now, you might be thinking, where's the turkey, the stuffing, the cranberry sauce? But hold on to your pilgrim hats, because the original menu might surprise you. There was indeed fowl on the table, but it was more likely to be duck or goose and maybe even swan and passenger pigeons if they were lucky. And yes, there was seafood aplenty, a bounty from the Atlantic, with clams, mussels and possibly even lobster gracing the table. But what about the sides, you ask? Well, instead of mashed potatoes and green bean casserole, the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag tribe feasted on a variety of squashes and pumpkins. Corn too was a staple, but not the sweet yellow corn we're used to. It was a harder variety that was often ground into meal for bread or pudding. And let's not forget the beans and peas harvested from the New England soil. And as for dessert, well, there was no pumpkin pie or pecan pie back in 1621. Instead, they might have enjoyed fruits and nuts, and maybe a bit of honey for sweetness. So, as you can see, the first Thanksgiving feast was a far cry from what we're used to today. It was a celebration of the earth's bounty, a testament to the resilience and resourcefulness of the early settlers, and a symbol of unity between two very different cultures. So there you have it, a feast that would make any modern-day Thanksgiving look like a light lunch. But like any good story, the tale of Thanksgiving has its fair share of plot twists. Our journey begins just after the first Thanksgiving, when the Plymouth colonists and Wampanoag Indians sat down to share a harvest feast in 1621. But it wasn't yet the national holiday we know and love today. Oh no, that would take some time and a fair bit of wrangling. You see, for many years, Thanksgiving was celebrated on different days in different states. Some observed it in early autumn, others waited until late November. Some feasts were solemn and prayer-filled, others were boisterous and merry. And some states didn't celebrate Thanksgiving at all, considering it a peculiar custom of their neighbors. In the South, for instance, Thanksgiving was often overlooked in favor of other holidays. Meanwhile, New England held fast to the tradition, observing a day of prayer and feasting that echoed the first Thanksgiving. But why the disparity, you ask? Well, in those days, there was no central authority to declare a national holiday. Each state was left to its own devices, setting its own calendar of celebrations and observances. This led to a patchwork of Thanksgiving Day celebrations across the country. Imagine one family in Maine might be tucking into their turkey and cranberry sauce, while their cousins in Virginia were still weeks away from their feast, and their relatives in Georgia might not be celebrating at all. But as the years rolled on, the idea of a national day of Thanksgiving began to gain traction. The wheels of change started turning, and the holiday we know today began to take shape. Yet, it would still be many years before Thanksgiving was recognized as a national holiday. That required the efforts of a determined woman named Sarah Josepha Hale, who we'll learn about in our next segment. Imagine trying to coordinate a family dinner when your relatives celebrate on different days. Talk about a logistical nightmare. Enter the scene Sarah Josepha Hale, the woman we should all be thanking for our Thanksgiving holiday, a name that might not ring a bell, yet her influence echoes through the ages, shaping one of our most cherished traditions. Yes, the Thanksgiving we know today, the one that fills our hearts with warmth and our tables with turkey, has a lot to owe to this remarkable woman. Let's take a step back in time to the mid-19th century. Sarah, an influential editor and an ardent advocate, had a vision. She saw the potential for a unifying holiday, a day of gratitude that could bring together a nation that was increasingly divided. A day to pause, to reflect, to give thanks. But this was not a vision easily realized. It required persistence, persuasion, and above all, patience. For nearly 2 decades, Sarah penned countless editorials, sent numerous letters to politicians, even to presidents, campaigning tirelessly to make Thanksgiving a national holiday. She painted a picture of a day that could bridge divides, a day that could foster a sense of American identity, a day that could, in its own way, heal. And then, in the midst of the Civil War, a time when the nation's divisions seemed irreparable, President Abraham Lincoln heeded her call. In the year of 1863, Lincoln proclaimed the last Thursday of November to be a day of Thanksgiving. It was a victory not just for Sarah, but for the nation. It was the birth of a tradition that has endured, that has evolved, but that has always remained a day of gratitude, a day of unity. So while you're giving thanks this year, remember to raise a toast to Sarah, the true hero of Thanksgiving. From a hodgepodge of regional celebrations, Thanksgiving has evolved into a holiday with its own unique traditions. Today, it's more than just a feast, it's a spectacle of culinary artistry, a carnival of parades, and an arena of gridiron showdowns. Let's talk turkey first. This feathered star of the show wasn't even on the original menu. Yet today it's unthinkable to celebrate Thanksgiving without a golden roasted bird gracing our dinner tables. The Pilgrims would probably be taken aback by our fixation on this particular poultry. I can just imagine their baffled faces. Why are they stuffing bread into a bird? And yet the turkey has become such an iconic symbol of Thanksgiving that it's almost as American as apple pie. Then we have the parades. Oh, the parades! They're a dazzling display of giant balloons, elaborate floats and marching bands. It's a spectacle that captivates millions of spectators, both in person and through the magic of television. If the Pilgrims were to time travel to our era and witness this spectacle, I bet they'd be astounded. Is this a celebration or a circus? They might wonder. But to us, it's a cherished tradition, a delightful prelude to the feast that awaits. And lastly, football. The Pilgrims, with their stern Puritan values, might not have approved of such frivolous entertainment. But for modern Americans, Thanksgiving football is as much a part of the holiday as the pumpkin pie. Whether you're cheering for your favorite team or just casually watching while you digest your meal, it's a tradition that adds a dash of competitive excitement to the day. So we've come a long way from the simple feast of harvest celebrated by the Pilgrims. Our traditions may seem peculiar or even absurd from their perspective, but they are what make our Thanksgiving uniquely ours. They bring us joy, they bring us together, and they give us something to look forward to each year. So whether you're a fan of the turkey or the touchdowns, there's no denying that Thanksgiving has come a long way from that first feast in 1621. So there you have it, a whirlwind tour of the history of Thanksgiving. We've embarked on a journey starting with the unexpected truth, where the first feast between Pilgrims and Native Americans wasn't exactly the harmonious event we often picture. It was rather a complex affair marked by tension and necessity. Moving on to the real beginning, we uncovered that Thanksgiving as we know it today didn't just pop into existence. It took the tireless efforts of individuals like Sarah Josepha Hale, the hero we needed, who fought for the national recognition of this day. We've also navigated through the twists and turns where Thanksgiving has evolved over the years, adopting new traditions and shaking off old ones. From turkey pardoning to the iconic Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, we've seen how this holiday has grown into a diverse celebration. Speaking of traditions, we've delved into the modern ones that mark our Thanksgiving celebrations today. From the turkey that takes center stage at the dinner table to the pumpkin pie that sweetens the deal, these traditions make our celebrations unique and memorable. And now, as we wrap up this feast of knowledge, let's remember to add a pinch of humor to the mix. After all, who wouldn't be thankful for a good laugh amidst the chaos of preparing a Thanksgiving meal? And remember, Thanksgiving isn't just about the food. It's about being thankful for what we have, even if it's just a break from the diet.